Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Wood, and as always we are exclusive to the PAUK radio network. Tonight, as always, as well, we are joined in the studio by the magnificent Kerry Greenaway and the stupendous Richard Clements.
I beat you.
I know, magnificent reminds me of Maleficent or whatever it is. No, we're nearly at my season.
Yes.
You're the evil queen.
Always and forever.
Always, yes, always and forever with that one, I think.
How is everybody?
I'm okay. I've got over a cold, just.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, now the colds, now everyone's not so much sort of social distancing and stuff, I suppose. We're going to get the colds and flus come back in now, aren't we?
Of course we are. I've spread them around enough already.
You do sound a bit bunged up, but I think we'll be able to manage with it, won't we?
Yeah, of course you will.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll manage.
Yep. Well, if you don't, so.
We haven't seen much of you recently, Paul.
No,
I've been so busy. It's been unreal. I've not had time to stop, like, for this man flu cold thing.
Well, Richard and I will be feeling a little pushed away, aren't we, Richard?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, sort of no Paul anytime, really, is there?
Oh, yeah, it's because I've been so busy. I tell you, it's just I can't wait for this lockdown stuff and the COVID to be over and done with, and then I could just get back to normal.
Well, yeah.
Well, word on the street is it's done and dusted, mate. I tell you.
Oh no, apparently it's coming back in, isn't it, for Christmas and the cold months?
Oh God.
I don't want that. I want it back to normal so I can just go back to being normal.
Wow. I feel like I am normal now.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much sort of down my way to suggest anything went on, really. Everyone just seems to be back to normal, so.
Yeah.
Me, because as I go down the street coughing, everyone moves to the other side of the road.
The crowd clearer.
Always one benefit, yeah.
It comes in very handy when doing the old St. John work and, getting through the crowds. It's like, and then it just parts. Brilliant.
God. Lovely. Lovely. Oh, dear. So what are we talking about tonight, boys?
Well, we decided on curses, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And I've taken it down a bit of a different angle.
Yes, as I can see. Sort of just flickering through some of your research.
Because
years ago, I watched a film called Drag Me to Hell. And ever since watching that film, I've never, ever crossed a gypsy.
Wow. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, Rich. I think you won that one.
Yes, I think you did.
Oh, we had a bet to see how quickly Paul would mention a film.
That's got to be the quickest, isn't it?
I think so.
To be fair, it's all about curses, and it's a gypsy curse. And if you see a gypsy, do whatever they want.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Sort of buy all their clothes pegs and lucky heaven a lot then, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I've got loads of that stuff. Yeah. That's it.
I'll tell you a little story. I was in Glastonbury and I was walking down the street and there was a gypsy and she was handing out lavender. And obviously you had to give her money for the lavender, right?
Yeah.
Across my palm and all that. And
just have that. Just throw the wallet at them. Just have that, whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I did. I bought this piece of lavender. I went to buy this piece of lavender and she just looked at me. She went, no, I won't take your money for that. And I was like, why do I need it? Do I need it that badly? I was like, oh my God. And she just gave it to me. She wouldn't take any money for it. Yeah, everybody else, she was making pay for it. Freaked me right out.
Oh, right.
I thought, oh my God, does she know something I don't?
Last time you went to Glastonbury, obviously.
It was actually the last time I went to Glastonbury, yeah. Yeah, that was really weird. Anyway, The reason I wanted to take this into a different angle is because it's one of those where I feel it's quite. It's one of those terminology things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you sort of hear curses, and you sort of, and a lot of images sort of spring to mind when you hear the word curse, doesn't it?
And in regards to the paranormal, it usually gets talked about in regards to the films, The Omen, Superman Curse, Poltergeist, the horror film genre,
Yeah.
right? Oh, no, Superman isn't horror, but that kind of thing.
Now you're treading on my toes and talking about movies now.
Well, only to get it out of the way, basically, before I veer off in a completely different angle. So I wanted to sort of look at, is there any scientific basis in this?
Okay.
For a start,
Right.
is there anything that backs up this, curse? And when I'm talking about this particular form of curse, I'm talking about that one where you're invoking supernatural powers to inflict harm on someone or something.
Yeah.
Like we hear it in your cursed objects and those sort of things. But how much is there to it, really? That's
Yeah.
kind of where I wanted to go with this.
Okay, so where did this research take you then? Because I can't. Well, I'm a bit blasé, about curses. I don't really believe in them, but I think it takes, I think it's a two-way street. You have to believe in curses, with, I suppose, for them to work on you. But generally, I don't believe you can actually curse someone.
See,
No,
I've seen a lot of like the Mikondi doll. That isn't that supposed to be attributed to curses?
well, no, well, yes, it is generally in the paranormal field, but when you research an Epigenetics doll, they're an idol.
Yeah, they're more
Yeah,
of a.
they're more of that kind of thing, and you give the Epigenetics doll your burden. So effectively, if you've had something bad go on in your life, you give that burden to the Epigenetics doll. Yeah, and then you give it an offering as well, which is why it has nails, because that's what you would tie onto the doll, the offering, and him to carry your burden, right? So
Right.
that's where it's sort of come from. And they're worshipped like you would an idol of a Buddha or something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's the same sort of thing, but it's a very primitive form of worship. So like you go to a church, you talk to God, you're giving God your burden.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Right.
then you
Yes, I can
might
see that.
and you might leave a couple of shekels or whatever in the collection pot. That's an offering, right?
Yeah.
Nice to move with the times. Shekels.
Shekels, I know, right? I like to bring these terms out now and again. So when you look at it coldly and the actions that go alongside that, there's not a lot of difference there then, is there?
No.
So it gets then tied in with things like voodoo and hoodoo and curses and all those kind of things get sort of like wrapped up around it,
Hmm.
and then the term becomes confusing.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? Because it's a
Yeah.
primitive, native, tribal ritual, we go, oh, we
Yeah.
see films like Live and Let Die, and you know what I mean? That kind of scenario. And the Condidale's appearance in itself is very like that, right? You wouldn't look out of
Well,
place in that film at
so
all, would it?
people mention voodoo, and
Mm,
because it's not very well understood, and it
exactly.
has got that confusion surrounding it and stuff, it I can understand that, especially again with the occult. There's a lot of occult workings, but you mention it to the layman, and
Mm,
they just go to the dark side of everything
mm,
because of
exactly.
media and films and things like that. So yeah, no, I can understand that.
Exactly. Whereas I don't see a ritual in a church any different from that kind of ritual. I just don't, it's a ritual. But
Yeah,
even that word itself has a connotation to it, doesn't it?
Well, even the church, particularly the Catholic Church, does have a form of curse, I suppose, in excommunication.
Yeah, casting
So,
out.
you know, you won't go to heaven or whatever, you know, you're excommunicated. So, yeah.
I know. So all these terms, they get confused. And people put that, oh, it's cursed. Oh, you know what I mean? But so where I started looking into this, and I came across an essay by Martin West, who's actually a classical scholar, right? And his title of his essay was Ancestral Curses. I thought, oh, right, let's look at this. Right. I was like well away with this one. And I thought, okay, so that's another form of curse, isn't it? You carry, you know, it's cursed family, it's been carried down. And, you know, we see this in the JFK family, you know, the family's cursed, right? So how much does this back up? So I thought, oh, let's have a look at this. So when he started looking at it, he said the term itself is actually corrupted because is it inherited guilt? Is it a genetic corruption? Is there something more to that than it just being a hexed curse kind of scenario?
It's just bad luck, and yeah, it's just bad luck, and because they got a belief in superstitions, that's what they went with.
So what the more research he did, the more he realised that the word curse and the folklore that surrounds all of that gets confusing. It confuses it. It blurs the lines between what is actually going on. So there's definite things that are you can separate off, but because of our understanding, it kind of disrupts it because there are lessons that you can learn from behaviorism rather than someone's gone, I've cursed you and that's why you have bad luck for the rest of your life. Has something in your ancestry been learnt, like a learnt behavior almost?
Right.
So then you have to go down the road of epigenetics.
Okay.
Epigenetics, rather, should I say.
Okay, well, then.
Right. Now, this is where we get into science. And I'm not a scientist, so any scientist listening to this, please forgive me. I'm going to try and layman term it for the normal people.
And if you're going to complain, write to Kerry. Kerry.
So basically, this is the study of alterations of the gene expression, which is caused by environmental factors. Right. So an external influence on you, it changes how your genes express it.
Right.
Okay. So we've all got our genes. Yeah. We all take on traits from our parents and our ancestors, family traits. Yeah.
Yep.
But if an external influence is that powerful, it has an ability to alter the expression of that gene. So whereas like one family would perhaps deal with it in a certain way, the experience would make them change how they would behave normally.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I think I'm going along with this. Yeah, carry on.
Now, these modifications for the gene that it affects goes on and off, right? So this all goes down to various hormones and stuff within the gene. So it sometimes passes down to one, not necessarily two.
Right.
Yeah, it might miss this generation and then come out later on down the line.
Yeah, I can see that, particularly in genetic sort of stuff. Yeah.
It's not changing the DNA sequences. So just be aware of that. It's a gene thing, not a DNA sequence thing.
It can skip it can skip a generation. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you research that? And that's what scientists do. They go, right, okay, I've got this theory of this behavioral change in the gene pool. So how can I prove this? Right. So he found that, right, first of all, they started looking at mice. And so they subjected one mouse to a really strong substance. I think it was methylacetate or something like that it was called, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what they did was that mother then had babies. So they then let it carry on, separated the mass when they got old enough, and then introduced this substance, and all the mices, or the mices, whatever you will say that word, all the baby ones avoided it like the plague because the mother had learned.
Yeah.
But they'd never come across that substance before, so how did they know?
Yeah.
So that was their first inkling. Okay. Now, molecular biologist Olivia Rando said it was obvious to researchers in the past, right? But it was like, how and why did that happen? So he was like, why has no one studied this? Why hasn't it been, why hasn't this been done before? Because it's quite obvious something's gone on there.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know, like with the computers, for example, going back like 20, 30 years, computers were few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother, for example, would have to learn how to use a computer. As soon as she dropped the sprogs, get them in front of a computer, they know everything. They're really good at using a computer.
There'd be no influence from the mother, though. The mother wouldn't have any influence on that. So it's not a learned behaviour, it's a gene modification.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Studied, they don't know. They're just assuming it's a learned behaviour.
Well, in 2006, Francis Champagne found that neglectful mothering rats caused DNA methylation of estrogen receptors in female offspring. So basically, if you neglect the female rats, when they grew up and had babies of their own, their body had a decreased estrogen level that actually caused them to neglect their own newborn, just as their mother had neglected them.
Right.
Yeah. So it's inherited rather than DNA to DNA transmission.
Yeah. So you come, yeah.
Yeah. So it turns it into genes. So when they started looking at humans with this epigenetics, they looked at something that happened at the end of World War II called the Dutch hunger winter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, this was in 1944 to 1945. Now, Germany created a man-made famine in the Netherlands, right, as a form of control.
Yeah.
Now, the Dutch actually kept very careful records of families and births during the hunger winter. They were able to track the effects of that period of starvation on pregnant women.
Okay.
By following their descendants through time, they see that there were certain windows in pregnancy where if the mother is starved, then the baby is at higher risk later in life for actually obesity and type 2. So it was almost as if that period of starvation had caused a change in the genetic pattern to need more food. So obviously, yeah. So although the mother was starved, the baby later in life might not be in a starvation situation, but eats like it would be, which causes complicated health issues later on in life, such as the diabetes and obesity, because they're eating food they don't need because of this starvation factor thing that's gone on in their history, in their family history.
Classes both of those, right? So I'm going to blame my mum for starving herself.
Well, no, because it was a society thing. So it's not like she deliberately starved herself. It was a situation that the mother found herself in.
Right, okay.
Do you see what I mean? She hasn't deliberately set out. It was an external influence on her as to why she ended up starving.
Wouldn't surprise me if she did it on purpose.
Okay. I'm going to put you back to the 1944 and 1945 Dutch hunger winter, is all I'm going to say. But you can understand why, when they come out of that situation, the mother then goes back to eating normally. The child is never going to be aware of what that mother went through. She then has a child who later in life has this chance to store up food, because the starvation gene is always there. It's always controlling. Don't starve. Don't starve. Don't starve. Don't starve. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So it's affected the child in a next generation along that never witnessed that or experienced that. So it's been passed along in ancestor.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I mean, look at the people that are in Ethiopia at the moment, starving to death, and they're still having kids, and none of their kids are obese or got type 2.
Yet. Say the
Yeah,
situation in Ethiopia changes dramatically and it becomes a land of like the West, a land of plenty, effectively. Yeah. You may find that in future generations in this changed world of Ethiopia, those children have huge problems because they have this ancestral gene expression to eat. We could then have, I don't know, okay, they're in starvation mode, have been for years. Then all of a sudden, like in, I don't know, 50 years' time, the political landscape changes. They get plenty of food and water, and then they have massive, huge health problems. They could be a massive problem with obesity and diabetes in those children that never experienced the starvation years. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of research have got to be going on now about this because at the moment it just sounds a bit like a cop out.
Well, in 2007, a study was actually done on the Holocaust survivors regarding post-traumatic stress disorder. Right?
Yeah.
Now, they showed that the descendants of mothers who survived the Holocaust actually bear imprints of that ancestral trauma.
Okay.
Right, yeah, you can imagine it would do, yeah, if it's I'm thinking about it.
So those children never experienced it, the Holocaust. Okay.
But then how much about it have they told the child?
I think it would be, it's behaviour though, isn't it? It goes on behaviour, not what you know about it. Because we know about the Holocaust. Yeah. You and I know about it. We've read about it. We've researched. We've done shows on it. For goodness sakes, do you know what I mean? We films on it. All of that. I mean, God, after watching Schindler's List, if you want to bring films onto the table, we all have some form of trauma after that one. For goodness sakes, do you know what I mean? But it's not ancestral trauma. That hasn't changed our DNA. Not DNA. Our gene predisposition for post-traumatic stress disorder, whereas in the children ancestors of those people that suffered that, there is there's that tendency toward there's a higher case of that in that group of people, that they're bearing the imprints of those ancestral traumas that happened in the past. Didn't happen to them, happened to their ancestors, but they're still carrying the imprint of that ancestral trauma.
Okay.
So it isn't just that. So that's one factor where our character, effectively, our gene is imprinted. That's the best word, isn't it? Imprinted with this effect of the past.
Yeah.
Some could call that a curse. It's terminology. It isn't a curse. It's an imprinting on your gene, but it could be labelled as that.
Yeah, it could be labelled as a curse, but you look at it like that, it is sort of like, and if this is actually what is going on, this is a scientific sort of a fact that happens. It's something scientifically that happens, or biologically, should I say?
Exactly.
Very, very difficult thing to look into. It's almost like saying, I don't know, if I was afraid of water, for example, and didn't know that, centuries ago, one of my ancestors died on the Titanic. that's that ancestral trauma. But I
Exactly.
wouldn't.
Well,
But
we would class that as a past life. You know,
mm,
it'll get labelled as something it isn't. And I think this is the point I was trying to make with the curse thing, was
Yeah.
you can't jump to the assumption it's one thing. You can't go like your analogy of, oh, I must have drowned in a previous life because I have this massive fear of water and I haven't got any way
no,
of
be something like my ancestor experienced.
possibly.
That'd be the ancestral trauma.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a past life, but it's just I'm just pointing out that it'd be really difficult to pinpoint my behaviour to an incident that happened like 200, 300 years ago.
Yeah. But that's why they look at more recent things. So they can look at the Holocaust, for example, and then look at the ancestry
It's
gene
still,
pool through.
yeah, I still think it's a little bit of a jump in some assumptions as well.
Well, data and statistics.
Yeah,
You've got a lot of
but
data to back these findings up.
then to say something happened in the Holocaust, there might have been something previous to that that they've not taken into account.
But there
So
wouldn't be a trend across the whole selection of people with
Yeah.
their.
I think it's a very difficult one.
I don't disagree, but it's been, they've looked at it with animals in a laboratory as well and stuff like that. And that's why they've come to these conclusions. It's an ongoing study, but
Yeah.
epigenetics is one of the sides that we can look at and go, all right, so we wouldn't necessarily, you know, jump to the assumption now, knowing
Yeah,
that it was maybe what we would class in the paranormal as a past life,
yeah.
or it was
To
a
be fair,
curse.
it is quite a new theory, and it's only been tested in the last 10 years, so it's still in its infancy. But
Yeah, but it's definitely showing signs, isn't it, of relevancy.
definitely, yeah,
That's and that's it. They back it. They don't just back it up with like statistics. They do like, I don't know, all sorts of tests and stuff as well on hormone levels and stuff that we don't
Oh,
really
yeah.
get, to hear about.
We're not privy to, yeah.
Or if we do read it, quite frankly, we don't understand it.
yeah,
There's
That's more
always that.
like it. That's more like it. But we already accept that our parents' characters can influence us deeply as well.
mm,
Okay. We already accept that,
yeah,
don't we? Now,
Well, yeah.
studies of twins, now this began in the late 1970s, found that genetic inheritance is actually responsible for up to 60% of the so-called big five personality traits. Those are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism, and agreeableness.
Oh, right.
All right. And
okay.
again, this is an ongoing study. So in the last 3 decades, we've also learned that about 50% of the variance in aggression and aggressive behavior is actually hereditary
Okay.
rather than learned behavior, which was previously thought.
All right.
Right, now that was on a meta-analysis by Sybil Alexandra Burt of 103 twin and adoption studies, found that 65% was hereditary.
All right.
So violence.
I never knew. I always thought that these types of behaviours were learnt behaviours.
So did I. I didn't realise it was like, again, a gene thing.
Mm.
Oh, right. So all these people that go, you can't smack your child because it's teaching him to be abusive, is rubbish.
It's genetic inheritance.
Yeah.
So if
So
you're
now we've got the scientific evidence to back it up that if you slap your child because he's really naughty, that's not going to have a serious effect on him. Other than himself,
not necessarily.
he cries a little bit and gets sent to his bedroom.
Not necessarily.
Respect.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
There are two camps on this.
Oh, of course there are. They're always.
you have you have the genetic inheritance camp, but you also have the learned behavior camp, behaviorism.
Yeah, right.
Okay, which is basically early developmental in children, which is if you smack your child, he'll grow up to become more violent, right?
Oh, win then, can you? Basically, that's what you're saying.
Again, right, it all depends on your, perspective on this.
Yeah, but look how many parents are out there that used to get slapped when they were kids, and they've turned out all right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I got smacked as a child, and I bloody deserved it. Don't tell my father, because I'd never give him the right to that.
On the side of the genetics, yeah. That's it.
We'll go with it was his granddad
Yeah.
was a violent man kind of scenario. No, at the end of the day, but that is not. See that again? You've got the thin line. With that, you've got a thin line. There's a reprimanding smack, and there's abusive smack.
Oh, and there's an abusive smack, and there is a difference, quite a big difference actually.
I totally agree with that. There is. I know people overdo it, and that's abusive, and I don't agree with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you are in an abusive childhood, and the behaviourist camp, you're more likely to be an abusive parent yourself. Yeah, but that's learned behaviour.
If you're going to chastise your child and by slapping them, just one good hard slap first, and that's done then.
Wow. John B. Watson, he was one of the earliest developmental psychologists. He was a learned behaviour fan. Okay. He declared that give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chief, and yes, even beggar man and thief, regardless of their talents, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race. Mm-hmm. Because he believed that under how you behave is fundamentally the bottom line of how the child will turn out.
Right.
That's what he believed.
Yeah, and that sort of does make sense because if you have got a well-behaved child, but who's got well-behaved children, really?
Well, now.
Yeah.
I mean, that just screams control freak to me. Quite frankly,
But then it just goes to show that if you do knuckle down and be good and knuckle down, do your schooling and everything, you can be whatever you want to be.
Well, we've been told that for years.
Yeah.
We're in a very luxurious position of generation that has been told exactly that. Keep your head down, work hard, focus on your goals, keep going, you will achieve it.
That's exactly what he's just what he just stated, basically, isn't it?
But the flip side of that coin takes out any biological influence at all. Yeah. There are some kids that do all of that and still don't get it. And you get another kid that has, just seems to get the lucky breaks.
Mm.
So where do you go? Is it genetics? Is it learned behaviour? Is it just pure fate? What is it? We get back to this. It's not as clear cut as you can't just put it down to epigenetics. You can't just put it down to learned behaviour. You can't just put it down to inherited gene pool.
It's a combination, isn't it? I mean, even down to where you live.
Mm-hmm.
Demographic. Demographic.
I mean, in the UK, I mean, I know that we've got like space camps, but if you want to be an astronaut, you can't go down the local uni and sign up to be an astronaut and train for that. It's
if you're prepared to move.
Yeah,
if you're prepared to move
into
put
yourself out.
Yeah, put yourself out.
To be fair, no, we've got a space program and we've got a space academy type thing here anyway.
Hmm.
But it's just so few and far between. And, there's people out there that probably wouldn't even know about it.
But if you really wanted to increase your chances, you'd put yourself, which has a much more available space program.
But then again, if you're living in the poorer parts of London, for example,
Then you work hard to save the money to do it.
Yeah, save money to do it. You'll find a way.
You would find a way.
But then sometimes life takes over as well. And as you said, it's just a demographic and the hand that life throws you, really.
So it's not as simple, is it?
No.
When you look at it, it's not as simple. So
Mm.
when you're looking at the supernatural side of things, you have to consider all of these other factors as to why you might be getting, because it could be a learned behavior, it could be an ancestral epigenetic thing, it could be an ancestral inheritance of why you maybe fail or have a phobia or have something. You translate it as something bad that's always gone on through your family. But if it's coming from something like that, from a scientific perspective,
Yeah.
can you see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
We haven't even touched on cultural influences.
You like to complicate things, don't you?
I don't. I like to look at things from all angles, and it's not. I just think this is what makes it fascinating to me. So when you look at cultural influences, I had to then go to the most obvious one, which would be voodoo curses, right?
Yep.
Okay, because
Yeah,
that's
I
like
suppose, yeah.
perhaps the most famous one,
Yeah,
and the
I'll go with that.
and the most demonstrative. Can't say that word. Demonstrative.
Yeah, demonstrations, yes.
Of
What you said.
a cultural curse.
The analogy that you want.
Mm.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Because voodoo is actually very family.
Right.
It's about loyalty, commitment, family values, not just an immediate family, as in who's alive, but
Yeah.
ancestral family. That's why they celebrate their dead so much. That's why there's such a link with voodoo and death, because of this ancestral commitment to family.
Totally.
Right. So you start looking at that, and then you go voodoo curse. Okay. And this is the most negative side of it that people always look at, right?
Yeah.
Now, voodoo death is equated with psychogenic death. What do I mean by that?
Well, yes. What do you mean by that, Kerry? Pray tell.
Basically, it's psychosomatic. You're told you're going to die, so you do.
Oh, right.
Right?
So we're all born into a world where we know we're going to die, so we do.
No,
Eventually.
if someone tells you that you're cursed in that
Mhm.
religion, in that culture, yeah,
Yeah.
your belief in that culture is so strong, and that curse, effectively, yeah, it will happen because you are so believing of that.
Right.
So it's almost like the power of the mind, then, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No scientist believes that voodoo as magic is able to kill somebody. So basically, it causes such psychological distress.
Yes, I get it. Yeah, on the person that is cursed. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So sorry. Psychological distress. Like I was saying, no scientist believes that voodoo curses, magical curses, can kill somebody. But it's the psychological distress.
Yeah.
And it's not just the person who's been cursed, their family and their community.
Yeah, and how they act towards them and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I think it's also coincidence as well, because if someone says, "Oh, you're cursed," and tomorrow something's going to happen to you, well, chances are something's going to happen to you anyway, because you, I don't know, going to work or whatever. But you could just put it down, whatever it is, you could just put it down to the curse.
Mm. You could do. Now they backed this up by a study. Now this is a Western example, so this has nothing to do with voodoo, but they backed up this with scientific, medical studies. Now there was a guy who actually got diagnosed with esophagus cancer and uncontrollable diabetes, right?
Yeah.
And he decided it was time to die. He's like, basically, he gave up on life on that one. Now he managed to live through Christmas, but then he soon died. So basically, he talked himself into death. Okay. The autopsy actually revealed that the diagnosis of cancer was was false.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. He had a mild case of pneumonia, but what his illnesses weren't going to kill him. That was neither of those would have killed him. The pneumonia itself was mild. Didn't even realise he had pneumonia.
What actually did kill him?
Pardon?
What actually did kill him?
Himself.
Okay.
Because he'd been told by the physician that he had this esophagus cancer and uncontrollable diabetes and he was going to die sooner rather than later. He actually acted like he was going to die. So he did.
So they couldn't determine what the cause of death was?
No, because the illnesses that they did find were not enough to kill him. Now, everybody believed in the physician's diagnosis. His family did, he did. So they called it passive suicide.
Oh, right.
And so that was a Western example. And they think that this is what happens with voodoo curses.
Yeah.
Because in places like Central South America, Africa, Australia, the Caribbean, all those kind of places where these religions, which they are prevalent, that the cursed person basically lies down and waits for death. They know they're going to die because they've been told that that's what's going to happen. And the people around them start preparing for it, which reinforces the psychological impact. Well, you're going to die, so we'll arrange a funeral. Thanks. I'm not dead yet.
Not dead yet. It'll be soon. You mark my words.
So they're still living, but everyone treats them like they will die and that they are going to die. And the belief is that strong that basically they do.
Yeah, I can understand that, because if someone's told, oh yeah, you've got 3 months to live, most people will come up with a bucket list of all the things they wanted to do that they've never done before, and they get dangerous and dangerous. You got bungee jumping or something, playing without a parachute or something, and like eventually, if it goes wrong, you're going to die. Well, you just proved it right, haven't you? Yeah.
But the belief in it is so strong. Now, however, that's one side of the camp. As always, there's two, right? The other side of the camp don't believe in psychosomatic death or passive death. Yeah. He said that in those kind of countries, underdeveloped countries, basically, they were not subjected to toxicology tests of their death. And that needs to be done, right? To determine the level of this psychosomatic effect, basically. Yeah. He feels that if you're going to put a curse on somebody, then they might have actually been poisoned. So they didn't actually die of psychological trauma. They actually died of good old-fashioned poisoning.
Yeah.
Now, we're well known that voodoo practitioners work with poisons such as the blowfish.
Yeah.
Okay, which isn't something we get in the UK, but over there they get it, and it's very difficult. I believe when because zombie comes from that culture as well, if I remember rightly, and I think it was remembering now, that they make a tonic that actually has the blowfish, a level of the blowfish poison, which actually causes you to almost comatose to the point of people think you're dead, and then when you come round you're so out of it that you act like a zombie. So it's zombification, but it's not like you've died and come back alive, but effectively you, in the eyes of everybody else, you have.
No, there is a condition that does that. Yeah. I can't remember what it is, but no, you're right.
Mm-hmm. So they think that all these voodoo curse deaths could actually just be good old-fashioned poisoning from the blowfish
Yeah.
venom
Right.
or whatever it is that they do. Yes. However, flip side of the coin again, there have been a few cases in the first world countries that did have full autopsies after their death, after a voodoo curse has been put on them, and no traces of poison are found. So what is going on now? I don't know. I don't know what you guys think.
It's probably a mixture of both, But I certainly sort of go with if you believe you've been cursed and you believe in the curse, then yeah, your body will act accordingly and you are responsible for it.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in that camp as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is why most mediums don't tell you the future, because you're going to make it happen.
Mm.
And I think that's pretty much it.
I think the problem is, again, it gets mixed up with mythology and folklore and hearsay, and you don't cross a voodoo practitioner because you don't want to get cursed, right?
No.
The fear of
No.
that alone stops you from doing anything bad against the community or the culture.
Yeah, I've seen those films. I wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want to either, and gosh, very weird. And they are very close with their ancestrals. Do you know what I mean? The death, rituals and stuff that they do, and possessions that go on, and it's quite traumatic for a Westerner or an external person to see. It's one of those where it is very dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this happen in sort of like African countries. I particularly saw one documentary. There was a crime committed in the village, so the elders sort of went, right, and who done it? And nobody put their hand up. It goes, right, we'll get the witch doctor to come and find out and who did it. And they got a confession straight away from someone standing in the crowd. It was just the fear of having the witch doctor come down,
Yeah.
That's sort of,
But I mean, in those sort of communities, they are very close. That they
Mm-hmm.
do have close, and even in, I mean, I'm film orientated, but even when like you see on the telly, you've got communities of African Americans in like Boston and all that. They have their own little community.
Mm.
That so that sort of it still happens, definitely.
Mm. Yeah, it actually came up when to do with the slave trade. It
yeah.
was
Yeah,
actually linked into the slave trade, and when you research that side of things, it's very eye-opening and incredibly interesting. I
yeah,
will say that much. Now, you mentioned the Gypsy Curse right at the top of the show, didn't you?
I did. Don't annoy him. That's it. Simple as that.
And
That's
no, you shouldn't annoy the gypsies. Now, I found this incredibly interesting because, you know, nowadays we class them as travellers, don't we?
Yeah.
And then there seems to be an almost like I've got Romany links. I mean, one of my
yeah.
guides is actually a Romany.
To be fair, I think there's two types of gypsy. You have got the traveller ones that do like to travel, but you also got the ones that claim they're travellers, but they actually stay put in their little caravan mobile home things.
Okay, well, it's really interesting on this one because there, there's a whole mythology and a whole folklore, and they're a cursed nation. Gypsies
Right.
are a cursed nation, which is why they keep moving.
Okay, I didn't know that.
No, I didn't either. I just thought it was just a lifestyle that they liked, just like to keep moving, right? But what? Let's go into that because this is fascinating. Now, the modern day gypsies that we know and love today can be traced back to a nomadic tribe called Roma,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And they are referred to as goddess worshippers. Now, the goddess was actually Kali. If I said to you Kali, what film does that sum up to you?
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
What culture is that?
That was it. Was it Indian or Pakistan?
Yeah, Indian.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Now, they were later referred to Gypsy as they actually believe they came from Egypt and spread to the European countries, but it goes back further than that and actually goes to the warrior class in Punjab, which is India. Okay, which is the Mohenjo-daro. It's the earliest town in the Indus Valley, believe it or not. So when the DNA research, yeah, they established the European gypsies actually have genes to northern India.
Excellent.
It is believed.
Probably why because gypsies do, real gypsies do appear to be a bit swathery, don't they? Sort of have quite sort of dark skin. So,
Well, you always make. To be fair, when someone says Romany, you kind of go Italy, Spain.
Yeah.
Or
With the olive skin, the dark hair, and actually, if you look at some of the dances that they do in Spain, the flamenco and stuff like that, you kind of see traits of that coming through.
You do, don't you?
You do. Well, when you think that these, India, the Northern Indians, go back in time, the invasions led to an exodus of these tribes that spread across Persia, Turkey, Greece, Europe, Spain, Russia, Finland, Egypt, Morocco. All these countries suddenly had Indian people, immigrants effectively fleeing from the invasions of their own country into these countries.
Yeah.
So they then take on the cultural influences of the country they've gone to, basically, alongside their own. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, because they had spread across, the tribes were actually looked upon with intrigue and suspicion. And that's why there's so many myths and superstitions attributed to them.
Oh, right.
And then that led to a widespread persecution.
Yeah.
Of them, because there was initially this superstition.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And also, they've got huge links. Now, oh my God. Now, the gypsy culture has given us so much, to be fair. When I started looking at the gypsies, there's so much music, dance. What does the Christian church not like?
Yeah, music and dance. Yeah.
All the things that, the gypsies are actually embracing. The Christian church are going, oh my God, what are you doing? Oh my God, devil spawn, that kind of thing. Going back in the time, that is, everybody. That's why music in churches is not fun, it's dirty. And there is a reason for that, because it shouldn't be enjoyed. It is there to worship, not to enjoy, because enjoyment leads to things like sex, and we don't want that, do we? Right? No control in that. And they're very free people.
Yeah.
Okay. So they then get linked to occultism, fortune telling, tarot cards, shamanism, spells, all of that. They're all attributed to the gypsies. And this is where the Gypsy Curse comes from.
Ah.
Okay. Now, the Gypsy Curse goes something like this, right? May you wander over the face of the earth forever, never sleep twice in the same bed, never drink water twice from the same well, and never cross the same river twice in a year.
Oh, right. Hence, as you said earlier in the piece, Kerry, why they're always travelling.
Which is why they're always travelling, because they're a cursed nation.
Right.
The Christian version of this is that the gypsies were actually responsible for making the nails of Jesus's crucifixion.
Oh, right.
But they only made 3. They should have made 4, but they only made 3 to make his suffering pass quicker.
Right.
Yeah. And because of that, God cursed them to wander forever, but reprieved them on the sin of stealing, which is why we have such a cultural distrust. Oh, when the gypsies are in town, lock down your belongings.
Yeah,
Even
well,
to
you do.
this day, that sticks.
Yeah, you are right there.
Uh-huh.
But then there are some. I'm not saying that they're all like that, but there are some that play that part as well. It's just a minority, but there are ones that are quite dodgy.
Again, it's cultural. I mean, I know. I mean, I have been involved with the gypsy, modern gypsy culture, and I've not found them to be anything other than a close-knit community that you don't cross.
Yeah, no, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It is just a minority of people that do actually play that part. I do know some gypsy people, and you know, there is like a minority of them that
Mm.
are as dodgy as they come, but you know, they play that part. I think it's almost like, you know, people say they're dodgy, so they think, you know what, if you're going to assume that's what we do, well, then we're going to do it. Might as well.
Yeah,
Got nothing to do.
the ones I know are incredibly close knit. Their family ties are phenomenal. I mean, I had a situation, should I say, and I don't know if I've talked about this one before, but I have a friend who's part of that community,
Yeah,
and she likes a tarot reading now and again from me. Otherwise, she goes to me. She's got plenty in her own community, but she likes me. Anyway, I came home. I've done her reading, come home, no problem. Lovely. Had a lovely morning with her. Washing up. My dog, my fearful hellhound himself, backed into me growling to the point I thought, I've got an intruder. It was summer, so I had the doors and the windows open, right?
yeah,
I grabbed the frying pan, as you do, and went out of my kitchen into my front room, and I stopped dead, and there was a spirit stood in my front room, and it was a gypsy man. Yeah, very threatening spirit. This is not an actual physical man, a spirit.
yeah,
To which I backed out of the room, thinking my iron pot is not going to have any effect on this one. I had to phone her up and say, "Can you call him back, your ancestor back? He's in my front room. He doesn't like it. He thinks I'm interfering in the community, and I'm not." I was invited in. So
yeah,
she got a couple of other members of the community to call him back and basically reassure the ancestors that what work I was doing with them in that way spiritually was actually requested and invited, not interfere. I'm not interfering.
Yeah.
That I'm totally respectful of that culture, I suppose you would say. And every time I go into that world now, I have to ask the elders to basically send out a message to the ancestors that it is something that they want an invite in. So I
yeah.
don't get this spirit man because he was scary. All I'm saying, scary. I've never been scared before, but I was scared on that one because he was very threatening. And that, true to I stand here, and my dog reacted as well. That's how come
Yeah.
I first felt it.
They're very, as you said, a very tight community, aren't they? And they have been for centuries.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think it is a belief system.
Well, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back from that, we're going to look a little bit more into the belief system side of things. Join us right after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK radio network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network. Now, before the break, we looked into a bit of science about epigenetics and learned behaviour and ancestral inheritance and all sorts of things like that. And I think if you look at, we looked at voodoo and we looked at gypsy, you can sort of see some of those influences coming through, on those really.
Oh yeah, I mean, as I said, I sort of learnt a little bit from that little bit, and you were saying earlier, like I never realised they were from northern India. I always felt that, well, believed the common sort of theory that they're from Egypt originally.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, and that's from DNA sequencing
Yeah.
that they've done, which again is absolutely fascinating. But you can understand now where if you also the belief of something, the Gypsy Curse belief of that, the Voodoo Curse, the belief of that, the responses of that. I just find the whole thing incredibly fascinating. And if you're in that culture and that embedded in that tribal influence of society that you're in, how it could have such a psychological effect on you because your belief runs the show, as it were. Yeah.
Indiana completely fictional.
Wow. Of course.
There's the truth in it. That's where we're going.
But if you believe in curse, generally, do you believe? I ask you a question now. Do you believe in curses?
No.
No. A tentative no from me.
We also have to look at confirmation bias in this particular one. If you believe it, then it must be true, right? And we will only look at material or patterns of behavior or things that happen around us that will then confirm what we think is going on according to our belief system. So if I thought I was cursed, every bad thing that happened, every failure, every scenario that you can think of would all be down to the fact that I am cursed when I'm not.
And you could equally turn that on its head and say that you are blessed, and then you can draw all the good things that happen to you, along the same timeline, couldn't you?
Exactly that, Richard. You and we're seeing this quite an awful lot of people extracting information from a document and reading it with a biased perspective, when actually the document isn't actually saying that. They're reading it in a way that backs up their belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? In exactly the same way as things that happen to you will confirm your belief in something, whether it be a curse or a blessing or whatever. If you think you're lucky, you'll start being lucky only because you see it. You look for a sign, you see a sign. Confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
Right, so the Curse of Tutankhamun is basically media driven. Now, this actually derived from the notion that a curse would befall anybody who broke into the Pharaoh's burial site, right?
Yeah, it's fair enough. You can believe in a curse like that, can't you?
Yeah, particularly if it's written on the walls.
Yeah, it's written, on the door you go through,
in hieroglyphs, that translating those is not as simple as we found out in previous shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And that has been, evolving scenario through archaeological time, shall we say.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, basically, the press got hold of this, put it out there about the Pharaoh's curse. Anything after that day of the tomb being broken open was any death, any misfortunes to any of the team was automatically put down to the Curse of Tutankhamun.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually break that down, it doesn't hold water. The timeline doesn't add up. Things that are put out in the media have been twisted to fit the narrative to confirm the bias of the Curse of Tutankhamun. But when you actually start looking at it, it doesn't hold water.
Okay.
We're not going to go into it because I'm sure that's been covered on many, many shows. And I know we've covered it on previous shows. So go back and check other shows that we've done if you want more details on that. But I can promise you the actual Curse of Tutankhamun does not back up in timeline. Because if it was a curse, it would happen. I would say immediately. You break the curse, you break the seal. That's it. That's it now. Within weeks,
Yeah.
it's going to happen. It doesn't. In some cases, years.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
In
Yeah.
some cases, poor old Tutankhamun had travelled the goddamn world before anything had happened to some of the archaeologists. So you kind of have to look at it logically.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
because the media has labelled it cursed, that's it. And this is the problem. This is the influence, the power of curse to influence people stems from their belief system in it and how strongly they believe in that. So you then lose perspective of actually what's going on. You join the dots, you come up with 20 out of 4 plus 6. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it. It's easier to jump to the mysterious thing, the mysterious and the supernatural beyond overriding your logic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, actual psychologists refer to this as magical thinking.
Ah.
Now, actually, belief in curses is actually associated with certain personality characteristics going back to your inherited facets, should we say, right? So tolerance of ambiguity, neuroticism, basically those people kind of have a stronger belief in curses. So if your family is particularly neurotic or tolerance of ambiguity, now that is basically where your level of being able to cope with uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have,
I get it. Yeah.
yeah,
I know some neurotic people, and I can see that.
Yeah, so if you've got those tendencies, then you're more likely to give way and believe in curses themselves.
Yeah.
Supernatural curses, this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in extreme cases, a belief in curses can undermine your own confidence and your own success. You can actually.
That makes sense. Yeah. If you've
Yeah.
got a strong belief in curses, I can't see it doing you any good. It would do you more harm than good.
Exactly.
Because of the nature of what a curse is.
It's basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you're cursed, so you are.
So you are cursed, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to break that thought pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Now we talk about the placebo effect. Yeah. There is also something called the nocebo effect. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but the nocebo effect.
Yeah,
I'd say the nocebo effect.
Or the nocebo effect, even. Yeah, that's probably a better way of saying it. Yeah. Now we know the placebo effect is basically, and we acknowledge that that's a thing. We talk about it in terms of medical trials, don't we?
Yeah.
That's probably where it's most commonly associated with, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the placebo effect. So if you think something's going to make you better, it's going to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It probably will. So this is why they do the placebo tablet in regard to medical trials.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's where it's most famed for. And that placebo effect we see in play in quite a lot of, places.
Well, it's in play with the production and introduction of medicines, isn't it?
It is definitely, but it's also down to a belief system. So if you think, say, for example, if you want to go and buy a Nurofen, you'll buy the branded product because you think it's better and stronger than a supermarket's own ibuprofen. It's the same thing, packaged differently, but your belief in the product, and this is where we come into marketing and narrative and all sorts of other things come into play here. But your belief is that the branded product is better. You won't think so. When you take it, you might take a supermarket thing. It's not as strong, so it doesn't have as much of an effect. Whereas there's no difference.
There's no,
Now we are becoming more savvy to that, I would say, as you know, as we get on in time, I would say, because we start looking at ingredients and milligrammages and stuff like that, and we're a bit more knowledgeable about that. We've got the information now, but a few years ago people weren't. But there was a belief that the branded product was better and stronger and had a better effect on you, and it played out. People perception when they logged down the effects. There's no difference in the tablets, but there was a difference in how people reported it making them feel.
Yeah.
Okay. But the other side to the placebo effect is the nocebo we're going to go with, yeah?
Yeah, nocebo, yeah.
Yeah. Now, this term is actually taken from the Latin for I will harm. And it basically means something that rationally should have no effect actually causes a deterioration in health.
Right.
Okay. Now, it's difficult to research because obviously this one's got a dim view. In psychologists, they don't like to do this one because they don't want to harm from a psychological influence the subjects that they're trying to do.
Yeah, the subjects they're treating.
You know, it's like, oh, you know, we can't really research this one that well because, you know, we don't want to tell them this. But, you know, there is a strong relationship and it's a lot to do with dialogue, how it's put to you. Yeah. So when you look at the two terms, placebo means I will please and nocebo means I will harm. So it's down to how it's dialogued to you, how it's fed to you, how it's basically marketed to you. So this becomes a psychological way of telling you something so it doesn't have a negative effect, which is why people are very careful.
Yeah, with the nocebo, I mean, and the placebo, this could come down to us basically as the practitioner who's administering it to you and what we call bedside manner.
Exactly. Which is why there is now so many restrictions on what they can say, how they say it to you.
Yes.
And it's got to be logged and witnessed in a lot of cases. They have to have a witness in the room while they do it.
Yeah.
All because of the way that it's been put to you.
Yeah.
Because that could be a nocebo and that can't be seen to because it could have a negative effect on your mental well-being or physical well-being because of a belief in that. Going back to the diagnosis guy when we looked at voodoo and the Western version of that, when the guy had been told he was going to die, he had incurable esophagus cancer and uncontrollable diabetes. He died, but unfortunately the physician I got caught on my physicist was wrong. So when they did the autopsy, there was actually minor curable things wrong with him, but he died because he talked himself into it. So this is why you've got to be really, really careful and how you put it. It's crazy, isn't it? Oh my God. When you start looking at this, it's not so simple as I curse you and you are now cursed. It's whether or not you believe it or not.
Yeah.
Right? However, the problem we have nowadays is we have a huge influence on us from people we'd never meet.
Yeah, well, yeah, we do live in that world, don't we, of mass communication and people we don't know even, isn't it? We never meet, we don't really know. But they do talk a lot to us, don't they?
They do. And we have a thing called the chain letter. Now, do you remember the chain letter from our childhood, guys?
Oh, yes, the old chain letter, yeah.
Get it through the post anonymously. You must write this letter out 7 times and pass it on to friends and don't break the chain, otherwise bad luck will befall you forever, right?
Yeah, I don't realise when I was a kid.
No, as a kid, as a kid, it was always a bit shocking, wasn't it, to get something like that, and it would worry you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can see, yeah.
In this day and age, things have stepped up a little bit more. We have social media.
Yeah. And now we have, the banker from Nairobi to look out for.
Apart from him.
Apart from him, yeah.
Well, I don't have a banker. I've got a prince wanting to give me money.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's got no living relatives. He needs to pass his money on to somebody, and I'm his nearest living relative, apparently. Little old me. Little old pure British DNA sequencing going on over here. I don't know how I'm related. Anyway, getting off the topic. The problem is, we've talked about the media influence in regard to curses, and we looked at that in regard to Tutankhamun, right? And our general overall inherited neuroticisms that can increase our belief in curses. And this comes in at quite a young age. If your parents are more, that way, then you're going to be more that way. So a kid then gets a chain letter, or in these days, we're seeing more things like the Zozo challenge or the Momo challenge.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're sort of challenges they have now, isn't it?
Yeah. And I thought, right, if you don't know what the Momo challenge is, basically is that it was a WhatsApp thing, I believe, and it's quite a scary picture of a very Japanese looking face. Yeah. And basically you have to perform tasks, and the tasks get progressively more dangerous, and you have to pass on the message and do the instructions. Otherwise, unfortunate consequences are going to befall you. They could befall you because you're doing dangerous tasks anyway, but small thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, this actually, the influence of this, you don't think that these things have influence. You only have to look into Slender Man to see how much influence something like this can have on a teenage or a young mind, a teenage mind.
Yeah, particularly with the Slender Man incident. Yeah,
exactly. Now, I mean, it ended up that 2 teenage girls tried to kill another child, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because of Slender Man, and so Momo was very much on this. Now, it was born on Reddit, and then ended up being passed around on WhatsApp, and it's basically the face is like a woman with enormous eyes and like a beak kind of mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
It went viral. Now, the artist himself is actually a Japanese artist called Midori Hayashi, who created the image. He didn't create it with this in mind, the Momo challenge. He didn't create it with that in mind. It was taken and used in conjunction with.
Right.
Okay, a bit like Eric Knudsen, who created Slenderman for a bit of fun. But then since what happened with Slenderman has happened, he's now totally distanced himself from that. He's like, I don't think so. I'm not getting involved with this. Now, it's all based on hearsay, rumour mills, chain emails. It's, curse will be placed upon your entire bloodline if you don't forward this to at least 7 people. Do you know what I mean? And it's just awful when you look at it. Now, this is more worldwide. It hasn't really hit the UK. So if it does hit the UK at any point, just be aware of this one. Because last year, police in Argentina actually investigated the death of a 12-year-old girl, which they believe was associated with the Momo game.
Right.
Right. So this is dangerous.
Yeah, but if it's having that effect on someone, yeah.
In the same way as Slenderman didn't start off that way, but ended up that way.
Yeah.
These things go viral. They carry weight. And back in the day, we'd go, Mum, I got this letter. What do I do with it? She goes, oh, it's a chain letter. Throw it in the bin. It's crap.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Nowadays, it's not as easy to control that, because half the time, no matter how many times you say you're going to watch what your kids do online, you do to a degree, but you can't watch them 24/7 on their medias. There's their media channels that they've got these days. Right? Now, they think that this is actually a means of, they think that this kind of is driven by criminals obtaining data as a way of extortion. So you've now got a criminal factor driving these things as well through the internet. So you've got to be very careful. But the belief in the Momo or the Zozo or the Slender Man, all these things are cultural belief systems that people buy into. Do you think, oh, it can't happen? Who'd fall for that? People do. And they're targeting teenagers who have more of a chance because they lack experience more than anything else.
Yeah. And
to
they
fall
can
for it.
bow to peer pressure as well, can't they?
Exactly. So anything like that says you'll be cursed, don't even bother. Delete it. Don't go near it. It's just crap, quite frankly, and don't do it. So basically, we've come to the understanding that there's actually no scientific evidence at all to support the supernatural basis of curses.
No.
Bang. Sorted.
But the psychological influences driven by media, peer pressure, and cultural influences actually has a huge impact.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, where do we go from here then?
Well, not down the curses street again.
However, flipping the coin again, even our Andy Mercer, when we spoke to him about the occult side of things, Richard threw it out there to him. Do people still do curses, right?
Oh, yeah. And he sort of said, yeah, as quick as you can say, Jack Robinson, he sort of no hesitation, no anything.
Mm-hmm. And he also said they do have an effect, even when the person it's aimed at isn't aware of it.
Yeah.
If a person's not aware of a curse and yet experiences problems, as it were, from an external point of view looking in, you do a ritual on somebody, you put a curse on somebody, not recommended, by the way, right? And you can see that since you did that, they have had nothing but bad luck, and it's nothing, it's coming true what you decreed, basically.
Yeah.
Is that coincidence, or is it the fact that you actually do and are able to put that energy out there?
I think it depends on what it is and what's happened. I mean, when you're cursing someone, are you going to be quite specific, or or you're going to leave it vague? If you're specific and that specific thing happens, think, well, okay, that's because I said that.
Or can we just put it down to coincidence again?
Well, yeah, there's an element of that as well, isn't there?
I don't know what to make of it, to be fair. I know that somebody said that they cursed me, and for a little while I kind of bought into that, but then as time went on I thought, you've got no influence on me whatsoever. As I learnt more, to be fair, I thought, because I looked into it, I was like a little worried for a while, but then I thought, you know what, you've got no bearing on my life whatsoever, so no. And I don't put down anything bad that's happened to me down to that, and if they'd even done it in the first place. So yeah. One thing's for sure, I do think you have to watch your belief system, look at your cultural influences. If I'd grown up in a voodoo village, for example, then I could well have succumbed to the belief in it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a lot more, as we've sort of like gone through the show. There's a lot more sort of mechanisms in a curse, society, cultural. There's so many factors involved.
Exactly.
Which are controllable if you know where to find them.
If you do the work, if you're prepared to go and do the work and look into it in that way, and overcome maybe epigenetics or inherited traits, or recognize it, work through it, spiritual,
recognize them,
change behavioural patterns,
and recognizing them, and at the very least should give you some comfort.
Exactly. Now, when we talk curses, we can also talk about expressions like the rude words that I'm not allowed to say on air.
Right.
Now, a lot of these just come from usage of words. We've talked about this before as well, haven't we? So, like when we talk about swearing, and blasphemy and stuff like that. And I'm going to have to be very careful with this one because it's very easy to pop one out. If you actually look into the origins of those words, the Victorians had a great influence on this one, I would say.
Definitely.
So go look into that. If you want to look into curse words.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going through them now, yeah.
Yeah, when you start looking at the origins of some of the curse words that are in regular use in this day and age, that's quite humorous and quite eye-opening. So go look at those because that's another form of curse that you can use. That tends to be in everyday modern language these days.
Yeah, true.
Which I found quite funny. But I'm not going to go into that because it means I'd have to say naughty words, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to because we're far above that, aren't we?
Of course we are.
And actually, a lot of those words are actually about repelling bad luck or repelling the devil.
Yeah.
Also, they do have a bit of usefulness behind them there.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them, yeah.
And some of them are about, like, if you think of lineage, that B word, yeah, it was just a word they used for an illegitimate child. And it became a derogatory term because lineage was a huge thing in the past.
Yeah,
in regards to hereditary. Well, if you go back to the show we did on Grimm Fairy Tales, it shows you how people would murder to keep the lineage and the inheritance rights through. And if you weren't pure blood, as it were, rather than if you weren't married, sanctified, then that's why that word came in. That's how it turned into a derogatory term.
Correct.
So let's have a look at a few curses then that haven't really hit the main media. There are a few out there because I didn't want to hit the normal ones that we cover quite a lot because we've done them, quite frankly. Previous shows, we've done them. So I found some that aren't quite out there.
Ooh.
The first one is the Titchborne Doll. Now, this is an English tradition that required the Titchborne family to donate a large amount of food to the poor every year. We used to call it alms.
Alms,
yeah. Now, Lady Mabella Titchborne started the tradition, and she laid a curse on anybody who would break the tradition. So if the food was not donated, then the Titchborne family would have a generation of 7 sons, then 7 daughters, and then the family name itself would die out.
Yeah.
Right? So Lady Marbella Titchborne was a bit of a curse word. And I'm not quite sure whether the wise generation of 7 sons, 7 daughters came into it, but this is how folklore and mythology spread, isn't it? It's not quite enough that, just to say that the family would then be cursed. They have to sort of like expand it a bit as to, well, what's the parameters of the curse? I need to know. So they add it in, right? So in 1796, the family stopped the doll, reportedly due to claims that poor people and vagabonds were abusing the privilege.
Yes, I know it all. They know when they're onto a good thing. Free food. Yeah, both.
Exactly. Now, giving alms to the poor is actually still a thing. The Queen does it, doesn't she?
Yes, with Maundy money.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little tradition that still continued roughly. Not much, but kind of still undercurrents of it are still out there. By 1803, part of the family home had collapsed. One branch of the family tree had indeed produced 7 brothers, and Sir Henry Titchborne had 7 daughters of his own. Several of those brothers died, and the doll was reinstated because they were thinking, oh my God, the prophecy is coming true. The curse is true. 7 brothers, 7 daughters.
Yeah, so
quickly reinstated the doll. And basically, the last remaining brother, Alfred, managed to carry on the family name just in the nick of time.
Yeah, boy, yeah, they're pushing that one, weren't they? Woo.
Just a little bit. Now, I think there's a bit of coincidence going on there. Just so happened he had seven, there were 7 brothers, 7 daughters in succession. A few deaths in there. But this is 1803. Look at the death rate. Look at the conditions people were living in. Look, even the gentry weren't immune to that.
Yeah, living in a house that had fallen down. So it must have had its health issues living there.
You don't know what other calamities have befallen them. You don't know where, what they were doing in job-wise and lifestyle-wise. You know what I mean?
No, you don't. Yeah.
So, it would be interesting to look a little deeper into the family tree of that one and find out a little bit more about that. But they did reinstate the doll, and the family name has been managed to be carried forward.
Oh, that's good. A happy ending.
Ooh, swipes the brow with relief.
Yeah.
Now, let's have a little look at Timur. Timur was a Turco-Mongol conqueror in the 1300s. Now, his remains were entombed in Gur-Amir in Uzbekistan. No, Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan, yeah.
Now, his body was exhumed in 1941, and on his tomb, allegedly, it read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble," and another inside the casket that read, "Whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I."
Well, 1941, yeah. I think I know where this one's going.
Particularly when you look at a mere 2 days after Timur was exhumed, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa.
Yes.
Yeah.
The invasion of the Soviet Union where Uzbekistan is.
Yes.
Spooky.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. It was the largest military invasion in history. Now, Timur was actually reburied over a year later under Islamic rites. And then, funny enough, as just after that had happened, the tide of the fight in the Soviet Union, which specifically the Battle of Stalingrad,
Yes, had
changed
turned.
the tide.
Yeah.
Was it a curse or was it a premonition? Because he might have just thought, whoever the geezer is that's just going to disturb my tomb, you're going to unleash Adolf Hitler. So that could have been a premonition.
Well, both of those could have been a premonition, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Well, they sort of cross 2 sort of areas, don't they? Yeah. Whether it's a premonition, but yeah.
Do curses exist, or is it just premonition?
See how it gets confusing?
Yep. I'm just thinking about it because I get a headache.
Pele's curse. Now, this is Hawaiian, right? And this is about basically, and this actually, it says in general, anybody who takes rocks or sand, right, from Hawaii, it isn't. It's in basis of the green peridot beach. It's peridot that is the problem here, not any old rock or sand. Hawaiian, you can't take peridot. It's a gemstone. You find beaches in it. It's absolutely beautiful. Nearly popped out one of those curse words there. And the legend of that is to do with the god that resides inside the volcanoes in Hawaii, and it's her gemstone and not to be taken away from Hawaii. So, when you look at this, it's basically bad luck until you return the items. So people have taken the green sand. It's not sand, it's actually little gemstones of peridot that have taken it, basically send it back to Hawaii and say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to." And then they put it back and it's, all their bad luck is shifted off their shoulders. That's a thing, though. People taking rocks and stuff from places and then having to return them. We have many cases of this in regards to tombs, old earthenworks rocks and stones from there. We've had even down to East Drive. Somebody took some rocks or gravel from the garden and returned it. You know, that's a famous one on the paranormal circuit. You know, pictures even. I've taken a picture of somebody and didn't know of Robert the Doll, for example, and now I've had nothing but bad luck. And so what's going on there, guys?
I don't know. It's just, you know, it's just people. I think they're wishing it and they're wanting it too much, and you know, and it's up and other people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have taken that," you know, because bad things might happen, you know. And do they happen? I don't know. I'm quite suspicious of a lot of stuff I read on social media these days. Which is where all these stories usually end up.
Yeah, but they're out there anyway.
They're
I mean,
out there, yeah.
to be fair, the Hawaii curse is well known in the rock and gen show of field. Yeah, in the metaphysical market, it's well known from that. Although you can get peridot. It's not just Hawaiian peridot, but nobody will admit if it is Hawaiian.
Oh, right. I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know the answers to this. I think I've shown several different opposing views on this and scientific, you know, studies that have been looked at. All the information is actually out there on Google. You can go and read deeper into all these sides that we've shown tonight. And I'd go do it. It's fascinating when you start looking at the different facets of it.
Oh, yeah, and I would agree. You know, we've certainly gone through a fair bit in this program. You know, sort of like, you know, for there being a medical reason for curses. You know, what with the genetics. I mean, quite fascinating, really.
Paul?
Definitely. Yeah, I still don't buy the whole curse thing. To be fair, I just think it's like coincidences, and then people making it fit.
Well, like patterns of occurrence. Because we are trained, aren't we, to see patterns in things.
Absolutely, yeah.
I say trained, it's part of our
Yeah, and it all depends on what sort of person you are. If you're sort of like a person and curses are very high up on your daily agenda, I mean, it's certainly not something I think about through my day-to-day living. You know, it's something I've never really thought about. You know.
But you say that, but the world we're in, the folklore, the mythology, the paranormal, we come across it quite a lot.
Oh, we do come across it, yeah.
So it's sort of bubbling away under there like a good old potion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but and to me, they are sort of more sort of, they sit very well in the folklore sort of area of things, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of still wary. I wouldn't deliberately go out to get cursed. If I went to Hawaii, I wouldn't take some peridot, that's for sure. From the beach or lava stone or any of the other sedimentary rocks that you can pick up in Hawaii, just out of respect for the country, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You know, I mean, there is a thought, particularly on that one, that the, you know, like they do a tourist marketing kind of scenario.
It's certainly what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, they're trying to keep Hawaii pristine. They don't want people taking bits of it away. So they put this alleged folklore curse out there so people don't, basically. Wherever it comes from, whether it's media, social media, whether or not it's just, you know, something that starts as a fun and game, as some of the, you know, Slender Man started off as a bit of fun for that artist, and, you know, the creepypasta scenario came through, you know, and takes a life of its own and gets twisted. I don't know, but it's interpretation.
Yeah.
The more I read into it, the more I thought it's all about interpretation of fact, and how you perceive stuff, and down to so many influences, not just your immediate influences, but even possible ancestral influences that had influenced your gene pool. Yeah, I found it fascinating.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's certainly more to it than what I started off thinking about this subject. I'll certainly give you that. Yeah.
Even down to learned behaviour, because you do absorb, don't you? So much between the years of like 1 and 7, I think it is. There's a lot of experiences you absorb that set behavioural patterns in place that you don't even realise.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I think by the age of 12, your complete brain is hardwired to how you react to certain situations a lot. Yeah, and that's up until the age of about 12, and then after that, you can change it if there's bits you don't like, but that takes a lot of hard work. You probably need a psychologist to go through it.
Oh God, yeah, this is all definite deep psychological delving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very much so.
And as I say, I mean, in the work I've done, I've come across them, and I can honestly say, I honestly don't think I've actually been influenced by that. I certainly wasn't influenced by the knowledge of being allegedly cursed. I was like, whatever. Do you know what I mean?
As you were saying, Kerry, we've been involved in the paranormal. We all hear, it's quite a common trait of castles to be haunted by the curse of the Grey Lady or whatever. But I only ever really sort of treat them as stories.
Yeah.
I don't treat them much more than that.
No. But that's you.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it makes for a good story.
Yeah, and then that turns into legends, and as time goes on. And we all like a good legend, folklore.
And I think the gypsy thing is, I think that highlights that, doesn't it? How a whole folklore mythology can build up around a race of people over the years, superstition and certain, traits now that we take as, stereotypes, we call them now, don't we, have come into play on that one. And, that's what we have kind of got in our heads. And every culture has that.
Yeah.
Stiff upper lip of the British. Cold-hearted, unemotional. America, gun-ho, a bit reckless, I think is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at, I don't know, let's throw me some other cultural stereotypes that we have. We've talked about gypsies, thieves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The Scottish. No disrespect to any cultural people out there that we're talking about at this moment in time.
Mean with their money.
Mean with their money. Yeah, these are all...
Even the English, there is stereotypes, whatever country people are from.
Exactly. And race.
Yeah.
Jews. Good with money.
Yeah.
Bankers. Do you know what I mean? And actually, when you start looking at the stereotypes and where they're looked at, it's all to do with how that would influence you. So it's money. Yeah. That impacts me. And I can twist that to be negative, which is basically what they did in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that stereotype cultural thing is now in stone. I don't know where the Scottish tightness came from, to be fair, but there must be something in the history there. So they're all there. These are influences that affect our belief systems on people. We make those snap judgments. These are things that could maybe have caused an epigenetic change in how we process things. These are learned behaviors that are passed down ancestrally. DNA that gets passed down via the womb through grandmother to daughter. These are things that we have got to look at, got to consider before we jump to the initial conclusion of curse.
Yeah.
It goes beyond immediate ancestor. It goes deep. And if every culture talks about, actually in the West, we don't talk about our ancestors in the way that the tribal communities do. And they have great respect and great links and great connections still to their ancestors. They recognize that influence and that effect that ancestral line has had on them. And in fact, in the UK, I would say the probably only strongest ancestral line that we look at is actually the royal family.
Yeah, well, you're probably right there.
Do you know what I mean? So, it's a fascinating when we started off with curses. I could easily have gone down like the infamous ones, the film ones, media driven. Think of it in terms of that. If you think a film is cursed, makes it more scary.
Well, family in the UK, royal family are supposed to be cursed as well, aren't they?
In what way?
Something to do with the bloodline, haemophiliacs, and that's how we know it now, isn't it?
That was Russia.
No, it's the UK as well. I thought it was.
Oh, I've never had a case of a haemophiliac in the modern royal family. I don't remember a case of any of the British kings having haemophilia. Richard?
No world disease.
Yeah,
definitely Russia.
Yeah, it's Russia, but it was all it all came back to Queen Victoria.
Yeah,
because the Tsarina in Russia was Queen Victoria's granddaughter, I think.
Yeah, so it is in the royal family.
But we've not had a case of it, though, have we?
No.
Well, I'm not privy to the records, so I don't know.
No. But when you look at Tower of London,
yeah,
there's, doom will befall the royal family if the ravens ever leave the tower.
Yep. Oh, we have our little sort of stories and legends, so yeah.
Is that a curse or is that just a legend, a folklore? And again, we come back to the terminology, don't we? We come back to interpretation of word.
Yeah.
And that's where you've got to be careful, I think, when you start, curse is very easy to put out there. And then when you start looking at it, it's down to interpretation of words. It could mean a supernatural spell put on somebody. It could mean a curse word. It could mean ancestral epigenetic. It could be learned behavior. It could be ancestral influence. It could be cultural influence. It could be psychological belief systems. It could be so many different things, and yet it's all wrapped under the word curse.
Yeah.
Fascinating, guys.
Oh, absolutely. It is. Talk all night about this and argue.
Argue. We don't argue, we discuss.
Heated discussion.
I mean, you can, look at joining dots, and making 2020, or, 2 + 2 is 5. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of things happen that way. And I just think it's funny how people, we'll put this show out and people go, oh, it's a load of crap, because they don't want to see that it could be possibly an alternative explanation for what is actually going on.
Oh yeah, there'll be plenty of people out there with a totally different opinion to what this show
put forward. Yeah, they want to believe the supernatural, the spell, the hex, the curse in that context.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have a lot of vested interest in them, don't they?
Mate, if you want one, you can get one. I had to trawl the internet beyond people selling all sorts of curses, hexes, all sorts of things. God, Dr. Voodoo Man, he's making a fortune, all I'm saying. On that note, have we got anything to report?
No, we still got the books for sale. So you could go to www.paranormalconcept.com and click on publications, and they're all there for you to have a look at, and you can buy them. I think that's about it, really, from me.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else to add to that.
Got any events coming up that we want to talk about?
We are going. Well, only your event, isn't it? It's at Sandwich Guild Hall.
Oh, I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah,
And we're all going there in, what was it, a couple of weeks' time or 3 weeks?
9th of October, isn't it?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it's a little way away yet.
It's a private little one. It's a place that's never been investigated before, which we're very excited about. Not going to lie.
Yeah.
Place looks awesome. And yeah, it's going to be good, I feel. And I'm sure that we'll be bringing you all the up-to-dates on that as it occurs. Not long to wait for that one, guys.
Yeah.
On that note,
I've got some new equipment as well to try out.
What have you got?
Good.
What you got? What you got?
Well, I've got SP7.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one. Hey.
It's actually an SP7 Model T.
Ooh.
There you go.
That means nothing to me.
We just added a torch.
Is that what it is?
And I've also got a trimeter as well.
Okay, what's a trimeter?
It measures EMF fields. It also measures radiation and VF radio frequencies to see what's coming through. Yeah.
All right.
So we're well on our way to being able to try out some things called like the Estes experiment and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's going to be fun, guys. Watch this space. Go over to our social media channels, Paranormal Concept, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook for all daily updates, various articles, flashback shows, even comical captions and what's in the box to test your psychic abilities. On that note, say good night, guys.
Good night,
Good night, guys.